What's up, guys? So this is a response to the train wreck, which was Casesandmaterials video to Renee Hendricks. And of course, relevant links will all be down in the patriarchal phallic oppression bar. And don't worry, Cases, unlike you, I have the courage to not block people after one comment I don't like. So basically, Cases had an 8-minute rant calling Renee fat and four-eyed. Funny how these radical feminists are, who are so very, very against judging women by their looks, resort to mocking these gender traitors' appearance or shaming their sexuality when it's against someone they don't like. So, in Renee's video, she was sticking up for Dawkins, saying that in her personal experience, the idea of hell was more traumatic than being raped. Here's the thing, Cases. That was her personal experience. That's all she was saying there. Now, I haven't been raped, and when I was growing up, I stopped believing in hell when I was about 7. But from my understanding, from actually talking to people who have experienced these things, I know that the effect these things have on people varies tremendously. Some people get over their rape very quickly. For some, it pretty much destroys their entire lives. And the same thing goes for victims of all kinds of abuse. The way I see it, to tell a rape victim who has coped exceptionally well that there's something wrong with them for coping that well is just as bad as telling someone to get over their rape. And that's just going to cause additional problems. He makes a couple of other claims. He claims that rape's a physical thing and therefore it's just automatically worse. Well, not necessarily. I don't know how common it is, but in Renee's case, this certainly wasn't how it was. You see cases, most of the trauma caused by traumatic events happens after the event itself, and it happens in the mind. Ideas and concepts make you think. Well, maybe not for you so much, but for most people they do, and for children who are taught to genuinely believe their friends are going to burn and suffer for all eternity, yeah, I can imagine it can be pretty traumatic. As I said, I don't remember taking hell seriously, but I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street 3 as a kid, and the thought of a serial killer entering my dreams and killing me made it hard for me to sleep for a week. There's a good reason that films have age ratings, because concepts and ideas can be traumatic for people who aren't mentally developed enough to take those ideas on board. Of course, even at the time, I knew it wasn't real, but it still had an effect on me. I can't imagine what effect that would have had if, instead of it being a film, I was taught about Freddy Krueger from an authority figure like it was something which was literally true. Maybe you've seen Hell Houses. They really don't hold back on the violent imagery, and children as young as 6 years old go to these. Those hell houses can be just as bad as some of the worst horror movies out there. Now, if this was in any context other than religion, this would be considered child abuse. And you know this. And as for the, if it's so bad, why aren't there support group things? Well, firstly, that's because religion is commonly viewed as a good thing, and secondly, that's the whole fucking point of the churches which preach it. Like many other snake oil peddlers, they create imaginary problems and then sell you the solution. I think Renee's experiences are probably pretty rare, but also far from unique. Of course, now, because of comments from Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, Cases has decided to distance himself from the atheist movement, and I'm glad that this cancer which has been infecting the community has receded slightly. But I'm afraid he's also massively misrepresenting what Dawkins and Harris were actually saying. Dawkins wasn't talking about rape. he was talking about minor or less severe sexual assault, things like groping, things which don't actually cause physical pain and just cause mental harm. Rebecca Watson was the one who brought up rape, not him. She was the one trivializing rape like she consistently fucking does for her own agenda, and in this case to slander Dawkins because of a stupid vendetta against him. Now, let's see what Dawkins actually said on the subject. First, he has been a victim of molestation himself as a child, and he states this in a quote on page 316 of The God Delusion. All three of the boarding schools I attended employed teachers whose affection for small boys overstepped the bounds of propriety. That was indeed reprehensible. Nevertheless, 50 years on, they have been hounded by vigilantes or lawyers as no better than child murderers. I should have felt obligated to come to their defence, even as a victim of one of them, an embarrassing but otherwise harmless experience. And here's the offensive quote which Watson doesn't like. Regarding the accusations of sexual abuse of children by Catholic priests, deplorable and disgusting as those abuses are, they are not so harmful to the children as the grievous mental harm in bringing up the children Catholic in the first place. I had a letter from a woman in America in her 40s who said that when she was a child of about 7 brought up Catholic, 2 things happened to her. One was that she was sexually abused by her parish priest. The second was that a great friend of hers at school died, and she had nightmares because she thought her friend was going to hell because she wasn't Catholic. For her, there was no question that the greatest child abuse of those two was the abuse of being taught about hell. Being fondled by the priest was negligible in comparison. And I think that's a fairly common experience. I can't speak about the really grave sexual abuse that obviously happens sometimes, which actually causes violent physical pain to the altar boy or whoever it is, but I suspect that most of the sexual abuse priests are accused of is comparatively mild, a little bit of fondling perhaps, and a young child might scarcely notice that the damage, if there is damage, is going to be mental damage anyway, not physical damage. Being taught about hell, being taught that if you sin, you will go to everlasting damnation, and really believing that is going to be a harder piece of child abuse than the comparatively mild sexual abuse. Okay, so he clearly points out that he can't talk about cases involving genuine physical harm. He was talking about cases where the harm is mental. Perhaps he is wrong, and for the majority of these less severe cases, they were more harmful. But since he's been through it himself, he is qualified to give his opinion on the matter. Talking about sexual assault or rape as anything other than being worse than genocide seems to be just like blasphemy to you people. Are you one of these people who believes that a rape victim is better off dead, like certain members of Atheism Plus? As for Harris, I'm not a particular fan of his, but I will defend what he said. This is from an interview which I'll link down in the description box. So, Saltman, isn't religion a natural outgrowth of human nature? Harris, it almost certainly is, but everything we do is a natural outgrowth of human nature. Genocide is, rape is. No one would ever think of arguing that this makes genocide or rape a necessary feature of a civilized society. Even if you had a detailed story about the essential purpose religion has served for the past 50,000 years, even if you could prove that humanity would not have survived without believing in a creator God, that would not mean that it's a good idea to believe in a creator God now, in a 21st century world that has been shattered into separate moral communities on the basis of religious ideas. Traditionally, religion has been the receptacle of some good and ennobling features of our psychology. It's the arena in which people talk about contemplative experiences and ethics, and I do think contemplative experiences and ethics are absolutely essential to human happiness. I just think that now I just think we now have to speak about them without endorsing any divisive mythology. Saltman, your analogy between organised religion and rape is pretty inflammatory. Is that intentional? Harris, I can be even more inflammatory than that. If I could wave a magic wand and get rid of either rape or religion, I would not hesitate to get rid of religion. I think more people are dying as a result of our religious myths than as a result of any other ideology. I would not say that all human conflict is born of religion or religious differences, but for the human community to be fractured on this basis of religious doctrines that are fundamentally incompatible in an age when nuclear weapons are proliferating is a terrible scenario. I think we do the world a disservice when we suggest that religions are generally benign and not fundamentally divisive. So first, Harris did a pretty good job of articulating the natural fallacy which Saltman raised by pointing to the two worst crimes he could think of, rape and genocide. To say just because they're natural doesn't make them right. This is generally how it's done. You pick the most extreme examples of fallacies to point out how ludicrous the fallacious statement is. The fact that he mentions rape here clearly illustrates that he does think rape is a truly heinous crime. As for religion being worse, the first thing you need to remember is that the majority of people don't have to go through rape, and it would be a straw man to suggest that he thinks that for a rape victim, religion causes more harm. But he's saying in total, he thinks that religion causes more harm than rape. I mean, let's take a look at some of the things religion has done in recent history. Many of these are also ongoing. Firstly, condemning condom use in a continent where 6,000 people die of AIDS every day, and that's a 9/11 every 12 hours. And perhaps these people don't matter to you cases because they have dark skin. And then, of course, genital mutilation, which is a severe form of sexual abuse, and that's happened to over 1 billion boys and girls worldwide who are alive today. I mean, I could kind of just stop the list here, but just for the hell of it, I'll continue. Witch burnings, countless wars, support of genocide, support of slavery, refusing gay people civil liberties, and in some countries executing them, psychological damage from threats of hell, arranged marriages to children, bombings, refusing abortions, opposing stem cell research which could save millions of lives. It's used to justify homophobia, transphobia, and reduces women to mindless baby-making machines. And until recently, in many countries, women weren't allowed to drive, weren't allowed to vote. Much of that was justified by religion as well. And there's countless other things I could mention. And perhaps you disagree about which causes more harm, but clearly, there's some pretty horrific things, and Harris does think rape is a pretty heinous crime if he mentions it next to genocide. Finally, the comments on your video about Nambla potentially quoting what Dawkins said. What the fuck? Is that seriously an argument? By that logic, you can never say that any crime is worse than any other, because some group might take what you said out of context, so we should never speak ever, because someone's just going to quote mine us and take us out of context. And do you really think that anybody is going to take Nambla more seriously because of that quote? If you do, you're even fucking stupider than I thought you were. Anyway, I've gone on for far too long now. It's getting pretty late. So until next time, comment, rate, subscribe, favourite my video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.